Well, hello.
Hello.
Hi, Gary Gerber.
Hello, Jesse Quay.
Congratulations on your graduation. I'm not going to
Yes.
say retirement because I know you're going to be having projects.
Yeah, I think it's going to be a gradual transition to my retirement. I'm still going to have access to the goings on here with permission, and we'll be sitting in on meetings, and so nice because I can just do that from home now. I don't have to
Right.
drive in an hour and a half to the office to listen in on a meeting.
Right. And the next, it's obviously been, 48 years
Yeah.
at Sunlight and Power. I'm sure there's different layers of the process, right?
I was just sort of preparing some remarks about this, and I realized, going through my chronology, that in fact, this business was operating in 1975.
In 75.
Yeah.
We get to tack on another year.
Yeah. I mean, we can say 50 years before I gave it up. I think, honestly. And I've been trying to be scrupulously honest. Why I've been saying 1976 is because that's the documentation we have, which was the contractor license.
Mm-hmm.
But we were operating under Tom Butt's contractor license before that. So that was actually, by the time we got the Sunlight and Power name on the license, we had already been operating as California Construction Services and doing the work.
And that was in 75.
Yeah.
And so there's we have a lot of questions because we'd love to document, the process. We'll bounce back and forth between, scripted, unscripted. I just want to start with, how does it feel? How are you? I mean, obviously a lot of different things going on, but how does it feel to be, at this threshold of?
Yeah, it's really mixed.
Yeah.
I have to say, and my wife Barbara has been just stalwart in all these years and been solidly behind me. But some of the time behind me, sort of pushing me out of the frame. It's like, Gary, go get a real job. To get a job where I don't have to put my life savings up every year.
Every 6 months, yeah. Yeah.
So
that's real.
That has been real, and I love to do things around the property. We have about 7 acres in the redwoods, and it's I could just be constantly out in the redwoods, clearing land or clearing wood, and we heat the house with wood, so I'm always, chopping, cutting, carrying, stacking, wood of all sorts, and that keeps me busy if I wanted to. But that's also getting kind of old. I've been doing that 20 years now.
Yeah.
Over 20 years.
I remember that house having, they say that every garden, every farm, there's multiple projects going on at once. It's like, you only run out of projects when you're gone, right? And so it's good to have projects. It's good to keep active. And in that property in Occidental, I do remember, the pool, the deck is under constant construction. The PV array needs tweaking. The well pumps. There's a lot of different.
There's always
projects.
something. Yep.
Yeah.
But things are pretty shipshape there now. We just put in mini splits.
Yep.
So now we can heat with using our PV power.
Yep.
When we choose to, or we can run it off of. We still have the wood stoves, and I'm still collecting and storing plenty of wood. So we've always got that as well.
Yep. So the first question, besides how you're feeling at this threshold, I guess we'd really like to hear on, I guess we don't call it tape anymore, on video, the overall story of how Sunlight and Power came to be, and what was really your inspiration. I know you started it out of Berkeley. You took your class in solar. Was it mechanical engineering, or I'll let you tell the story.
Sure. area of study was mechanical. It turns out the class you're talking about was offered by Marshall Merriam, who was actually an assistant or adjunct, I'm not sure, professor in materials science engineering. So he wasn't in my direct line of study, but I found out about the solar class, and he's the only one, first one, at Cal to offer any such class in the engineering department.
And this is 74?
Yes. Yeah, it should have been 74, yeah. My, might have been 73. It was towards, I think it was my last semester, so yeah, I think it was 74. But anyway, I signed up for that course after I had my sort of my aha moment in another engineering class where we were talking, the professor was talking about energy sources around the planet and over time, and how each different energy source had its pros and cons, you know, between oil and coal and gas and wind and solar and nuclear and all of the different sources. Tidal, I think, he talked about it all, and that was a precursor to me really getting into solar, was realizing during that lecture that there was only one source of power for the human race that made any sense, and it was solar. You know, it was essentially infinite. It was instantly spread everywhere on the planet, you know, I didn't really think too much of wind at the time, but certainly wind is more sporadic typically,
Right.
but also a great renewable energy for sure. But the point is, anything that's a truly renewable energy is the right choice, and that's what I recognized in that moment was I was not going to personally put my personal energy and knowledge towards a dead end,
Right.
which was coal, oil,
Right.
fossil fuel,
Finite resource.
finite fossil fuels.
So you're taking the class, you took the precursor, then you were in this class. You obviously felt passionate about it.
Yeah.
What happened? What was the next?
So I took the class, and the next thing I was graduated and in the master's degree program at Cal, and I spent, just so you know, I spent 6 months between those two times working for PG&E. It was arranged by my advisor. Yeah, he suggested I do that. He had a slot open, and he said, you know, you should try this out. It essentially was sort of what he was saying is, you've got 6 months until you're going to start your master's program, and you need work, and this is a place where a lot of engineers end up going.
Right.
And so you ought to take a look at it. It's, you know, there's no commitment. It's a 6-month gig. So I did, and it was one of the smartest things I ever did, because it, within a very short period of time, demonstrated to me exactly what I did not want to do as an engineer, and I had firsthand experience of being the smallest tiny little cog in a huge machine that was all about making money. It wasn't about the environment. It wasn't about the planet. It was about making money.
What were you doing for PG during that time?
So I'm a mechanical engineer. They put me in doing gas system design, which was essentially electrical work. So I was designing circuits to turn pumps on and off out in McDonald Island, out in the sloughs, where the gas fields were. PG&E had lots of gas. Canadian gas was getting pumped in underground to be stored. And it had to be controlled. And so I was specking valves, and so I was doing some things that were somewhat related to my studies, but mostly working on electrical diagrams.
Right. Which is periphery mechanical, but not core.
But a perfect example of a business that doesn't really care about efficiency.
Yeah.
Putting somebody that knows nothing, initially about
Right.
electrical design or very little, doing that work.
Mm-hmm.
And that was what I discovered was actually, that wasn't just an accident. That was built into the structure of how a monopoly like PG&E operates.
Mm-hmm.
The more they spend, the
Right.
more they make.
Right.
So all my efforts, and I had several efforts where I said, oh, we can get this activating valve
Streamlined.
less expensively than the one you guys have been specifying, and it's on your list, so why aren't we using that one? And they have an actuator that's, the other guy's actuator will work on this one, but it'd be cost less. So I put together this way of making this project work and saved, I don't know, $20,000 or something, which back in the 70s, at
Yeah.
least for me,
Yeah, it
was a lot of money. And I remember my supervisor said, he looked at what I was doing and he listened to me and he said, sort of like gave me a little pat
That's
on
fine,
the
young man.
head. And says, you go ahead and do that, that's fine. But
You're fired.
between us, every dollar we save is a dollar we can't charge
Right.
and make 10% on.
Right.
So there's not going to be much future in this type of activity.
Yeah. There's no incentive really
No incentive.
for us to streamline.
The opposite incentive.
Yeah. That's
And
a very
that's
powerful
still
lesson.
true today. That's the paradigm we're in now. That's why,
Yeah.
in my opinion, that's why we're in such terrible shape in California as far as energy costs.
Mm-hmm.
It's not about solar.
Right.
It's about a utility that's out of control.
Right. Yeah. More on that.
Yes.
More on that soon.
Okay.
So you interned. I found that's a reoccurring theme, that finding out what you do not want to do is a very powerful lesson early.
It
What were you
was.
going to say?
So I came back and I landed back at the solar class, only this time I was the teaching assistant. So I TA'd that course and basically over about a year, I got to a point where I needed to either finish my project and get my project going, which was a solar project that I had developed to put solar, a kind of a passive solar water heating batch system heater using inexpensive components that could go on almost any roof, was my intent when I went into the project. It wasn't working out well for me. I wasn't getting where I wanted to go. And I was actually talking to Dale Sarter, who was a good friend of mine that I had first met in the solar class. And Dale and I were talking, and he had gone on to work for Interactive Resources and an architectural engineering firm in Point Richmond. And he was saying, "Hey, we're designing solar homes now. That's my job. I'm here to help with that, to guide that. And I can't get contractors to bid on these designs, which they've never seen anything like them, and they don't know what to do with them, and they're afraid of them, and they don't want to bid on them, or if they do, they bid really high." And so I said, "Well, gee, sorry about that. That sounds like a bad problem." But it started percolating for sure. And at some point, before the end of the last class of that semester, actually at the last class, as the class was shuffling out the door, I don't even remember thinking it through at all. I just blurted out, "Anybody want to start a solar company?" And two of the people stopped, turned around, and said, Yeah, I'll do that. John Vale, Mark Gordon, myself. That was the three. We became the three musketeers of sunlight and power initially. And then we added on another from Interactive, an intern at Interactive said, hey, I'll join you. So that was the original four of us that formed the company.
Wow. And that was 75-ish?
75. And I basically dropped out of Cal.
Of the Masters?
To start the country, of the Masters. I had my bachelor's.
You had your bachelor's. Did anyone have contracting experience? Did anyone have?
Yes. John Vale was our carpenter guy. He's kind of a cowboy guy.
Yep.
Big, lanky guy, and he knew his way around a construction site. Larry Stern had an economics background, so he was our accountant. Mark Gordon was just a can-do guy that was unafraid of anything. Obviously, you'll relate to that. He's a salesman.
Okay.
So
had the gift of gab.
He had the gift, and then I was like design, engineering, contracts. Sort of central control.
So you had the major bases covered.
We did.
You got the band together
just by chance,
right? In that room.
In that room. Yeah.
And so it was a bold new world, right? Solar was not prevalent at all, right, in the industry. These are brand new.
Solar was unknown. Solar was, let's go out and educate people that you can use the sun's energy to heat water, because that's all it was. It wasn't PV.
Right.
It was all hot water back then, which
right.
worked well with me. Heat transfer and energy were my specialties.
Mechanical.
So I was very happy to work on those kind of projects.
And so they're not off the shelf type stuff.
Oh, there was nothing off the shelf. No.
So we weren't going down to Heliodyne and picking up collectors. and so in that era, what were you doing?
Well, the first solar system we sold, thank you, Mom and Dad, was out in Walnut Creek at my house. And we found out that the Fairlawn Institute, which was well known in the Bay Area, had a place in Berkeley, and they had built their own copper solar water heater. And they had leftover parts, we found out.
Oh, wow.
Because the community talked to each other. So we went over and bought some copper plate, some copper pipe from them, and we laid out some rods and we dimpled the plate so the tubes could sit down in, and we soldered the tubes in, and we built our first solar collectors.
And the frame was built out of?
Wood. Redwood.
I remember.
We didn't have the ability to form aluminum frames. And you couldn't buy an aluminum frame for a solar panel. So, yeah.
I remember that piece just because it's amazing. It's just, thinking about framing it out of redwood, which is a very, obviously, as you know, a very useful construction material.
Yeah.
But framing the solar collector out of the redwood, making your first collectors, and then putting it on your folks' house in Walnut Creek.
Yeah.
How did it work?
It actually was amazing to me because the sizing and the design of it was all on paper.
Right.
From the little tiny book we had as our textbook, Direct Use of the Sun's Energy by Farrington Daniels. And he had some instructions in there and some semi-guidelines, but all of it was theoretical and for me as to what's the load in this house and how much is going to be contributed, how efficient is it going to be. And I think we built it 4x10, a single 4x10. And it worked great. It worked as expected, as predicted. The water got up into the 120 to 140 range consistently. wasn't oversized, it didn't overheat, but it did heat sufficiently, and yeah, it worked great. My folks got $1,000 state tax credit. I think it was state, and the 10% federal tax credit was available back then too.
And was that specifically for a solar, or was that for anything having to do with efficiency?
That was for solar.
That's for solar.
Yeah, this was probably 76, and I think that was the year that it was enacted by the Carter administration. And yeah, that's what kind of got us started. One other wrinkle, the glazing.
Yes.
We didn't have access to glass. There was a project that I was doing at Cal that my advisor said, yeah, go ahead and try this out. I took fluorescent tubes, standard fluorescent 1.5-inch diameter. I was able to get clear tubes that had not been turned into a fluorescent bulb. And I just got enough of those that I could stack them in a row, side by side, so that they would butt up against each other and seal relatively.
Right.
I mean, not a perfect seal by any stretch, but they're well machined, and you push them together, they're pretty tight. So I laid those in over the redwood, at the top of the redwood, and it became like a double glazed solar collector.
Fairly fragile though, right?
Stronger than you think.
Stronger. Okay.
I mean, yeah, but if you think about it, you throw a rock at that, you'll break a few tubes, which can be replaced, but you won't break the entire
It had little
plate.
components,
So it actually was a little bit more sturdy in that respect, and that worked well. That was probably the most iffy part of my design, was using that radical glazing that nobody had ever used before.
Right. Interesting.
Yeah.
And so, was it word of mouth? You were speaking to a community that was, it sounds like the garden was prepped, if you will, for this renewable energy. There was a tax credit on the federal and state levels. How did people find you? How did you, after the first job with your folks?
Not very many did. I think the network that we had some access to through Interactive Resources, certainly they got calls and they referred everything over to us. I'd say our first year, aside from my convincing my parents to give it a shot, was mostly through Interactive's referrals.
Yeah.
And then they brought work of their own. So they were designing either homes that needed hot water or solar homes to begin with. I mean, they were designing and building solar homes from scratch. Well, they weren't building them. They were just designing them.
Designing.
Yeah.
So mostly architect.
So Tom Butt, the owner, the founder, later the mayor of Richmond, he was, kind of the force behind all of this for us. That he was the one, and he had a general contractor license that that was not active. He wasn't using it. So don't ask me how this worked, because I'm not sure, but somehow he made that license available to us. So I think he pulled the permits.
Got it.
For us at the time. It must have been. For about the first year, and then we created the DBA Sunlight and Power, the name, and we incorporated and did it all legally, and then bought his company and his contractor license with it.
And that was in 70...
Actually no, we couldn't buy his contractor license, but Ed Nold, who was working for us at that point, had his own contractor license. And so we used his as the RME.
And so in that mid 70s, late 70s, it was mostly, were you doing primarily solar hot water? Were you doing solariums? Were you doing?
No, we were doing strictly hot water, and then anything that came along. For example, Interactive designed a house that had corrugated roofing with water that would sprinkle down the channels, being pumped up from a storage tank and then covered with like Phylon or fiberglass corrugated glazing over the top. And so we actually were given, or were awarded the job of building that on a house. So it was kind of weird because it's part of the house. It's framed, and it's the contractors building it mostly, but we had to build the elements that they didn't know how to do.
Right.
Honestly, neither did we probably, but we figured
Bold
it
enough
out.
to try. Yeah.
So those kind of things. You mentioned sunrooms, solariums. Interactive was starting to do passive solar design that incorporated sunrooms and solariums. So I do remember the Wittes house in Orinda that they designed and we built from the ground up, ultimately. Now that was later, but that's where we got to eventually.
And so this was early days. You're starting to find yourself as a company, as a team. The rebates or the incentives towards green building ended at the end of the Carter administration, right? Around 80?
No, it ended in 85.
Oh, 85. Okay.
85, 86. And that was I'm not going to say even the beginning of the end, that was the end for probably 90% of the solar companies. But in between the late 70s and 85, we were growing like gangbusters. We were doing solar pool heating. And when I say we, I mean sort of the industry was growing around us. CalSEA was strong. We had our local Greater Bay Area chapter of CalSEA, California Solar Energy Industry Association, we would have meetings like once a month, I think. Once a month, dinner meetings, we'd have 120 people show up.
Wow.
I mean, we had a lot of activity, and that was probably in the early 80s that I'm talking about. Right up until 84, 85, things were still growing until they went off the cliff.
Right.
So that was good times for us. I remember we had probably 20 employees working almost all in hot water. We were doing everything I was willing to do, which is mostly anything that had anything to do with solar. So if they wanted they were putting in a swimming pool and they had a hot tub and they wanted space heating and they needed hot water heating, I would design an all-encompassing system, usually a central storage tank with heat exchangers off of it that would then feed to the various loads. Yeah. And then we would build the whole thing.
That's awesome.
So that was our, not very many companies were out there that could or would do that.
Right. And was this also in the days of the Whole Earth catalog? And the Whole Earth catalog was kind of, do it yourself a little bit,
Oh yeah. Yeah, we had people, show up or call and say, I've got solar collectors, can you install them? It's like,
right.
That's not the way we make money, and that's not generally the way we want to work. I think we probably did help people out because we wanted to help people generally. But the Whole Earth catalog was definitely out while we were, essentially sort of competing with it.
Right. It was a slightly different model, right?
Yeah.
The DIY.
Yeah.
I know up in Northern California, Mendocino and Humboldt, the cannabis industry was in the 70s and 80s was taking off, and a lot of people were going off grid and using PV, starting to use PV completely off grid. It was not grid tie at that point. So primarily solar hot water heating was king. There was the first great extinction, if you will, around 84, 85.
Right.
And then how did you How'd you survive those 80s, the late 80s, 90s?
I call them the solar doldrums from 85 to 2000. It's funny you mentioned the cannabis movement, but I remember right outside this store where we are right now, it was our warehouse back then. This space that we're in wasn't even ours at the time. Mm-hmm. We had the other space over there in the front and the warehouse there. And I remember someone coming in with a wad of cash saying, like to get some solar panels here. And we knew where that cash came
right.
from.
It smelled interesting.
Yeah. But to answer your question, we survived the doldrums mainly by service.
Yeah.
There were literally thousands of solar water heaters out there that, honestly, some of them were junk to begin with. Mm-hmm. There were a couple of poor players in the industry, frankly, who were selling overpriced and underperforming solar equipment. Mm-hmm. But those systems could generally be saved, and we could pull the covers off, which had turned yellow and brittle, and mm-hmm. put new covers on and things like that. And so rather than see those just go in the trash, we tried to make whatever we could, we tried to fix it.
Right.
And then we did get involved in the late 80s with solariums mm-hmm. as passive solar mm-hmm. room additions. So we were doing our best to stay true to our commitment to solar and to renewable energy, but we were going the passive design route rather than right. active, which right. nothing wrong with that.
No.
And I don't know, the 91 was the big fire in Oakland, you may recall. And there's a house very close to where the fire started, owned by a gentleman named Terry Galloway, mm-hmm. that burned down. Mm-hmm. And he somehow found us, came to us and said, can you design and build a solar home for me to replace the house I lost? Mm-hmm. And we just went nuts. The guy walks in the door and wants us to do that. And I said, yes, of course. Mm-hmm. Long story short, within a couple, 3 years, we had the house built, and it went way over budget because I was willing to propose just about any crazy idea right. that I found out about, and Terry was willing to do it.
Right. And he wrote a book, right? He wrote the book.
He wrote a book, Solar House. I wrote the foreword for mm-hmm. that book, actually. Mm-hmm. And
we actually went to go visit that house 15 years after. Mm-hmm. It was like 2011 or whenever it was. And because he was still very passionate mm-hmm. about that house. And we took a tour. It was wonderful. I think that reminds me of one of the points that I wanted to bring up with you is what do you account for, like you described taking that first class and being like, that's it. Something echoed or it ignited some kind of passion, and then you realized, again, maybe not planned, but there was something where you're like, who wants to start a company? And two other people were like, I do. And it's like a chain reaction almost. Mm-hmm. And finding folks like Terry Galloway, who was like, that's it. And registering. Do you have any kind of account for that? Where that comes from? Is it just because seeing a way something works and it's almost like a formula that you're like, yeah, that just...
Well, does it help to call it an aha moment? Because that's what I call it. And that kind of describes what it is. It's just like a sudden realization, something that maybe was in the back of your mind just suddenly comes to the forefront. It's like, oh, that's what I've been thinking. That sort of is the essence of what matters to me. And that's the way it felt, and that has stayed with me the last 50 years.
Yeah.
That's why when everybody else went out of business in 85, 86, we didn't even consider it.
Right.
It's just like, okay, how do we get through this?
Yeah.
How do we keep going?
Yeah.
And hey, we were 20, then we were 6.
Wow.
We weren't unscathed.
Yeah.
People went on and did other things.
Mm-hmm.
But it was a struggle to make money anyway. So, the people that weren't as committed
Mm-hmm.
as I was, and some of the other folks like Barb Hollenbach we talked about,
Mm-hmm.
We stayed with it. And you hear examples of other people in business who treat the employees poorly, right? People feel terrible, they hate their job, and I just sit there going, well, why do you still work there?
Right.
And I'm thinking, if my people felt that way, I wouldn't have a single employee, because they're sacrificing, to be here.
Mm-hmm.
They want to be here. If they hated being here, they'd be gone in an instant. I couldn't keep them.
Right.
And it made me feel really kind of like, what kind of boss am I anyway, so to speak. I shouldn't say boss, but what kind of employer am I that I wouldn't be able to keep these people here, as well as some jerk that treats people horribly, and somehow or other people won't quit.
Mm.
But anyway, that thought has ruminated in my brain a few times,
Yeah.
and I think I'm in a very fortunate position where what I have to offer is a place in this family, and people really want to belong to this family.
Yeah.
So it makes it a lot easier to find and keep good people.
Yes.
Earlier you were talking, and I was thinking about a catchphrase that I don't know if you use it at all, but it's sort of germane to what we've been talking about in general, and that is, who are these customers that are willing to go in with us? And it's like, I would ask, well, these are people who want to be part of the solution, not part of the problem.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's part of my aha moment, is that, like, this is a solution that is not contributing to the problem,
Right.
that is looming for the human race.
Right.
That's very appealing
Yes.
if you care about the human race.
Yeah. And I think the Bay Area, especially probably in the 70s, with this movement, social, ecological, kind of gaining momentum, may have been a hotbed for that kind of like-mindedness of, like, okay, let's find solutions, let's find ways to improve our situation and become more sustainable. So we worked our way through the 80s, early 90s. Now you're in the 90s, and we're just on the precipice of a pretty big change with the utilities.
Yeah, so we're building solar homes, not a lot of them, but several, designing and building some of them. Ed is a really good designer. We had a whole construction crew of people that, were not solar oriented, but being guided by myself and Ed and others to, apply their construction abilities towards building the solar homes that we were designing. And
mostly passive with solar hot water heating?
Yeah. The Wittes house I mentioned, we built at that time, I guess in the late 80s we built that one. Was just this, it's like this crystal palace up on where with sunrooms coming off in multiple different directions and just light everywhere and sunny, and
nice.
It was remarkable. That was an interactive design that we built. So we stayed with that. We stayed with building solariums. Meanwhile, in '98, I believe it was, net metering was approved at the state level. Net metering means, I know you know this, but our audience may not know. Net metering is where essentially if you have a solar system, what it means to you is you can produce the energy from the sun that matches up with the energy on the grid. If you produce more energy than you're using, you can feed it backwards through your meter into the grid and get full credit for the value of that energy. So if you're paying 10 cents a kilowatt hour, which back in those days, that's about what it was, maybe even less, then you would get 10 cents back for the energy that you essentially sold back to the utility. So that was not law in California until I think '98 was the year. And then in 2000-ish, the SGIP program came into play.
That's the self-generation incentive program.
Right. And that means exactly what it says, self-generation incentive. Self-generation meaning you're generating energy for yourself. It was a rebate for installing solar, basically. And it was for solar electric. It was not designed for hot water. So that came into play. We had then ultimately we got the 30% federal tax credit. We ended up with a 40 or 45% state tax credit. I mean, things were. I'm sorry, I've got my timing off. That was happening in the early '80s, not in the late '90s. The really high tax credits.
Right. And this speaks to the overarching theme that we're looking at in terms of the solar coaster, right?
Yeah.
There are these times of flourishing, and it's almost like an ecosystem. Like if you look at the history of the world, right? There's these mass extinctions, and then these amazing explosions of growth. Right. And so it's amazing how it echoes within this professional ecosystem, how that works. And so you're describing mid-'80s, this great extinction, and then this slowly ramping up. By the time you hit 98, 2000, about 20 folks at Sunlight Power? Or how many folks are?
No, we still had, in the early 2000s, we probably had 7 people.
7, wow. Yeah. So 7 folks. And then do you hire John O'Connor? Is that a 2000?
Could be. It sounds right, but
okay.
I'd have to check.
He'll correct us tonight at the boat party.
Yeah. We started designing, selling solar electric with battery grid-tied systems. That is what I'm talking about.
Right.
That became available to us.
Right. Whole new door.
With the net metering and the SGIP rebates. And between those two, we could start actively marketing solar electric systems. And again, in order to backfeed to grid, they had to connect to a battery system.
They had to?
Yes, they had to be associated with batteries. Because that's the way they were built. We didn't have the technology in inverters to invert power directly in the grid and deal with the ebbs and flows.
Right.
You need a capacitance essentially in the system that can absorb. Well, you're producing. Suddenly, the sun comes out from behind a cloud. You're producing a lot more power, and the grid isn't accepting it at the moment. What do you blow up your inverter? And what happens? So what you do is you divert it to batteries. And so we were doing battery systems in the early 2000s. in spite of what the CSLB wants to be convinced by the IBEW.
Right now, in the current climate. Right.
Right. And that was really, and you look at the curve of growth of solar, anything that goes back to like 2000, it's invisible in 2000, that curve. And then in 2005, it starts showing up, and then 2006, 2007, and all of a sudden, by 2010, 2012,
it's ramping up.
It's going like,
hockey
like a
stick.
hockey puck, hockey stick,
Yeah.
right. Hockey puck.
Keep the hockey pucks away from the collectors, the panels.
Yeah.
And that's ramping up for another kind of explosion, if you will, of growth. When I joined Sunlight Power in 2003, it felt like it was about 12 people, and we were just kind of ramping up in terms of like, okay, people are now asking us, mostly residential, right? Single family homes, people caught wind of like, this is also in the wake of Enron, right? Enron, I think was that 01?
Early 2000s, yeah, that's right.
And so it was in people's mind of like where their energy started to come from. Pricing was getting, gouging. SMUD, I guess, was the first interconnection in California, from what I understand. They were some of the leaders.
SMUD was a leader. They're not anymore, but they were.
Goes in cycles, yeah.
They were definitely leading. So whether they were the first, I don't know that. All I know is we were growing, and then around 2005, I got wind of a special program in the affordable housing market that allowed affordable housing developers to install solar and get this special tax allocation credit. What is that anyway? We didn't know. Nobody really knew about it, but once we found out what it meant, we started going after that market. And ironically, around the same time, Solar City showed up in the market with a whole different approach to solar for homeowners. And
2007, 2008?
It might have been that, I was thinking 2005, but it might have been as late as 2007. But we realized at a point, maybe around 2007, that they were a different animal. And they were going to go for market share. They were going to go for an IPO. And we were not going to play in that game, in that world.
This was third-party ownership, power purchase agreement.
Correct, and they were doing group purchase sales, and they were not that careful about their pricing. They were pricing to sell. And I remember talking to somebody, we interviewed somebody who left them on the sales side, and he said, my mandate when I walked in the door was make the sale no matter what. I could go as low as I needed to go in price, just make the sale. Put the numbers on the board.
Market share.
And so I think we wisely, when the multifamily affordable housing side started growing and showing up big time, for us, we decided to get out of residential. So we transitioned ourselves out. You probably know better than I how long it took, but over roughly a kind of a 5-year period, we were cutting back on the residential side of our business and growing the commercial side.
The first commercial PV, I believe, was Metro Lighting.
Right down the street.
Right down the street. A lighting store on San Pablo Avenue, sold by Doug Swarnberger. I believe it's like 05, 06.
Sounds about right. Charlie Bray was the fellow that I actually started. So I'm thinking he might have sold the first one, affordable housing project, just because it was his job for like at least a year, and he hadn't sold anything after a year. So I think we didn't fire him, so he must have sold something at some point. But Doug, I remember, was certainly selling whether it was affordable housing or just commercial.
Right. Architect by trade, and he strung together, I think, 5 or 6 Sun Vista inverters, which is basically, a residential model. Just supersize it 5 times, put it on the roof. Worked great. The lighting shop was tickled because their lighting bill was, exorbitant at the time. And then off to the races, and multifamily affordable housing, different levels of commercial PV, and it just scaled, and it went gangbusters. It was amazing. And I think that really set the stage for the environment we're in today. We still do a massive amount of multifamily and affordable. Just got back from Housing California, where our partners, to this day, they remember us from the older times, but they come to us because they trust we can find solutions for them, no matter what that looks like. And now, the table has changed multiple times from certain things like the utility being hostile remain the same, but Title 24 now is mandating solar or electric on every new construction project, which is, I don't know if you thought that would be the case back in...
It got suggested off and on over the years at CalCEA and CalCEA meetings and such. And actually there was a fair number of people that were against it. So kind of surprising to me, but in a way I understand that, it can attract unsavory elements as the super high rebates and tax credits and all that we had in the mid 80s was attracting some bad actors.
Right.
You got to be careful about that.
Right.
Also, when you let the government get involved in, any level of detail around what it is you're trying to build, it completely cuts off any innovation and can very often backfire because the government people that wrote the rules didn't think it through, didn't understand what they were doing, and it can really backfire. So in this particular case, I don't know, you tell me, how is that working?
So the actual mandate of it?
Yeah.
It makes for a lot less selling and a lot more relationship building. So you have repeat business where people know, okay, this contractor provides this service that we now need. It's almost as integral as plumbing inside the building. And so it's a very different relationship to a lot of partners, especially in new construction. And so the trust level has really increased to the point where it's a very pleasant working environment because of that. Now I think that same kind of spirit that you were describing in the 70s and 80s of people would come to us and we would just do it. We'd find a way of doing it. I think that spirit is still very much alive in Sunlight and Power because there are so many different types of solar projects. We still have a solar hot water system coming through the works, which is pretty amazing that we still have people cross-trained and are able to do that.
Yeah.
But we're now also still doing single-family homes with batteries, with different technology, but the same way we were doing in the early 2000s. We're doing a lot of different types of projects, which I think attract certain talent because they like that what's next type puzzle. And it makes for a very dynamic environment. And I think it only works when you have not only a very skillful set of team members, but also excited team members, people who really like to okay, well, let's figure this out. Maybe this is a tweak from an original blueprint, which, I don't know, provides an energy to a company that I don't think a company making widgets would have.
Yeah.
Right?
No, there's always been a can-do attitude here. As much as I sometimes have to say I have to take blame for things that go wrong, I think that particular thing probably comes ultimately or originally from me, because I'm the original Mr. Fix-It around the property. If anything's broken, I can fix it. That kind of comes with being an engineer.
Yeah.
But it's also in my nature. I think it's why I became an engineer. It's because I love to tinker with things, and the first car I ever bought, a Ford Falcon 56. Within 6 months I had started tearing down the engine and putting it back together again. And, couldn't help myself.
Yeah, I get it's overwhelmingly. I smile because I think of all the different projects Sunlight Power over the years that I'm Gen 6 or whatever you want to call it, 2003 through 2025, but the modern era, if you will, 21st century. The number of projects that were going on early was pretty fantastic, and they kept going. Carl home brewing biofuel in this building. Right? Making the biofuel as part of the vision to get off petroleum.
Yep.
Get off petroleum, make our own fuel.
And fully supported, right?
That's right.
Top to bottom in this company.
That's right.
Myself being one of the big cheerleaders for doing this. Yeah. In fact, it's been a little bit of, there's been some resistance. For the people that are, trying to keep the fleet running, it's
right.
This biofuel, it turns out it was contaminated in the tank that we were keeping it in, and was screwing up the engines on the trucks.
Yeah.
And everybody was pointing at the biofuel, saying that the biofuel is bad. It ruins engines, and come to find out, no, it's the tank itself that's causing the problem. Once we got rid of that tank and put clean fuel back in, the problem went away. So that's one of the things about thank you for mentioning the biofuel efforts. I'd almost forgotten about it. But it was a chapter of the company's history. It's very important.
And the biofuel, it's like it's an artist with all these different colors. There's so many different ways to harness the sun and to work in renewable energy. Solar hot water has always been part of the kind of the framework. Solar electric in the modern, last 2 decades and onward. Solar electric looks to have a very bright future, knock on wood, even despite the utility. Part of that model that you, since the beginning, since I remember you thinking about the total energy solution, right? Thinking about the whole home, the whole building, the heat pump was something that you always touted as this is a critical piece of the puzzle, and if we're not going to install them ourselves, we need a partner who can install it because it replaces the gas furnace. And I remember you sketching it, being look, this is how it works. It's basically like a fridge in reverse. It's not rocket science. This is something we can do. But America, for whatever reason, the prevalence of natural gas, the prevalence of oil, didn't adopt it. Europe adopted it. Japan was adopting it early on. We are now finally in this era where the heat pumps are here. So they are now in the building code. Everything that you were talking about 2 decades ago is now built into this building code, where all electric buildings are the code. And the only way they can do that is with the heat pump. How's that feel? I mean, you were the only one that I heard squawking about this 2 decades ago. It has now come to fruition that it's part of the code.
Yeah, well, it's inevitable. I look at things like that, and I see them as inevitable. Now, I could be wrong, because cold fusion could come back,
Right.
and
Right.
everything I've sunk my whole life into could be obsolete.
Right.
But I don't let that thought, creep into my mind
Right.
very often. In fact, it's probably been 20 years since I've had that thought.
Cold fusion sweats.
But the point is that it is once you see it as, yes, this is part of the solution, then what choice do you have but embrace it? I don't like, personally, I don't like going halfway. I like a finished product. And my own home, I've been on the path towards total electrification of my own house for 20 years, since we bought it in 2003. First thing I did was put in a PV system. I brought tanks up there for hot water, but I never put it in because I got a heat pump water heater instead. We've had that PV for almost 20 years. When we just went through the NEM change, the net metering change, and I decided to go ahead and revamp, go all new collectors. So I've got new PV system there, and new batteries. I had batteries.
Yep.
From the beginning.
My back still hurts. I remember those batteries.
Yeah. So now we have 3 Tesla batteries on the wall instead of this huge 6,000-pound behemoth in a room. So we have that, and we put in the electric range, inductive range. I don't know, 7 or 8 years ago, when they were pretty new. That's the problem too with being an innovator, is you're ending up with the new stuff.
Yes.
My first heat pump water heater, made by a major manufacturer, Rheem or Ruud, I forget who, but it failed under its warranty. I got a new one. So you have to be prepared for some failures when you're trying to stay on the bleeding edge. But yes, and to sort of wrap up the comment you're making, I mentioned earlier we've been heating with wood, but we now do have 4 mini split heat pumps in our house. And so now when we want the instant heat, we get home, it's a cold house, you don't want to build a fire and wait an hour.
Right.
You want to get the house warm, and we can turn that on. And so as far as creature comforts, and in terms of creature comforts, we have far more than most people around us, especially with respect to the fact that we've had batteries the entire time we've lived in this house. We've had a battery-based system. When the power goes out, which it does all the time in Occidental, we often don't know it.
Right.
We actually there has to be did the lights just dim? No, I don't think so. Well, maybe. Or something, some light, some clock flashing somewhere there's got to be something somewhere in the house to tell you, oh, by the way, you're on backup power.
Right.
Because you need to know that. If you're on batteries, you need to know you're on batteries, so you're not squandering. You're not turning on the hot tub or running,
doing laundry
running laundry, whatever it may be. We even go so far as to turn off our heat pump water heater when we know there's no grid power. But that's a pretty luxurious way to live, where you don't even know when there's a power failure.
Right. Definitely an insulation, a layer of comfort that wouldn't come otherwise.
And the reason I bring it up is not bragging about it, but just to say that with solar plus batteries, anybody can have this.
Right.
You don't have to, you're not suffering. People used to think, I think there was in the back of their mind, solar hot water, well, we'll put up with the fact that it doesn't heat perfectly and sometimes it gets too hot. And, there are issues, that mechanical and thermal issues with any of these systems typically, to where you sometimes have to have a discussion about, well, it'll be okay. It's not going to be an inconvenience.
Right.
To go with this.
Right. People want to do the right thing, but they want to be comfortable.
Yeah.
They want it to, and I could speak to you probably about the mechanisms and the concepts of solar for a very long time. I very much enjoy that. I think one of the pieces that we should speak to there's also very special, but is a little bit more sociological. About Sunlight and Power is how special, you described it as a family. It's something I use all the time, how you and Barb have really created and curated, almost like a garden, the people at Sunlight and Power that form this kind of tapestry of do-gooders who want to make an impact. And when did the first concept, I remember around 2012, you started eyeballing maybe retirement, or maybe Barb started eyeballing retirement. I mean, this is some time ago, and started thinking about transition of like, what does the next chapter look like? We've had a number of chapters.
Yeah.
And employee ownership came up.
Right.
Talk to me a little bit about that, about how you envisioned that next chapter and how that came about.
So we've tried several different times in different ways to pass the baton. The way that we've actually ended up doing it, if we want to be talking about ESOP, is that where you want to go with this?
Yeah, in terms of just, we're a power company, it's an energy company. The simplest way would be like, sell the energy, sell the product, but you chose a different path.
Yeah, and I learned about this from a customer of ours, Bob Kerner of El Cerrito Natural Grocery. First, which you mentioned 2012, I was planning to check and see when it was we installed his system, but that could well be right around that time. And he told me they had gone to employee ownership through the ESOP, and that's the first I had heard of it. So that's when I started looking at that. That's one of the ways, as you're getting older, you need to think about these things, right? About what am I going to do to pass on, or what do I want to do with the company? Do I want to, like you say, do I want to just sell it to the highest bidder and walk away with millions of dollars, hopefully, and just say goodbye? It's not in my nature, and it's not the nature of this company. Frankly, I think that it would have done a lot of damage to the company, to the culture. I don't think our culture would accept me just walking away like that. So what Bob said was, I sold the company, to the individuals in the company without any money changing hands, and the company's going to pay me back for the valuation of the business. And so I said, that sounds pretty good. And he says, oh, not only that, I can remain an employee of the company at the same time myself. So I can be one of the employees, not the employee, but one of them. And I thought, well, that's even better. And so I started looking into it. We wrote up an ESOP plan. We didn't act on it for quite a while, but I was aware of it and sort of in the back of my mind thinking about it, but realizing the company didn't have enough value that I wouldn't feel like a chump selling it off at especially when we talked about solar coaster. Solar coaster to me, means ups and downs, and ups and downs for the company.
Yeah.
In terms of profits and losses and such. And so when you can't show a consistent profit, it's hard to convince a valuator that your company's worth a lot of money. Not that I'm, was looking for a lot of money, but I'm looking for a fair valuation that allows me to basically make good on my promise to my wife that every time we raided her retirement account, she's going to get it back. Don't worry. We're going to grow and we're going to earn and we're going to get that money back. And I have delivered on that at long last, but it took a while.
Yeah.
And the ESOP method just felt like the best way to go, not to put a burden, not to sell the shares of the company to the employees where only a few of the employees would end up owning it, and only the ones that had money could buy in, and they'd have to buy shares and all that. This way, all the employees are participants in the ESOP, and the participants has a legal meaning.
Right.
In the case of ESOP, and that kind of cemented it. It all seemed to work really well. The only thing so far that hasn't worked really well is the company's consistent cash flow to pay off our note.
Right.
But we've decided that we're making a commitment, Barb and I, finally, that's absolutely got to happen, and we have a company infrastructure and leadership here that's going to make it happen, and
Yeah.
I'm convinced.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's, when you look around and you look at all the different models of solar companies and there's no shortage of entrepreneurs, right? There's entrepreneurs who are trying things, but I think you and Barb were very focused on the legacy, like the way a family would, in terms of what is it going to look like when we decide to go to Barbados, Hawaii, Mexico for indefinite period of time and just, check out a little bit. And I think a lot of entrepreneurs who have this, pioneering spirit, maybe don't have that skill set or that value. They just don't. It's not part of the framework.
No,
and
business is just a commodity for a lot of entrepreneurs.
Yeah.
I'll spin up this business. I'll spin it off. I'll just, all these spin words and all these dismissive words about business that basically just make it sound like a vehicle for their wealth, and that's all. It's not a collection of people who are trying to work together. No, it's just a business. So yeah, you're right. It's always been that way. I was thinking about this family business and the fact that as a co-op, working together, teamwork is so important at Sunlight and Power. And I just realized just today, thinking about the four of us, originally we were four. We weren't just one.
Mm-hmm.
We started this company out as a partnership, if not a co-op, a partnership. And off and on, like I said, well, we had I'm trying to remember the time frame, in the late 80s, early 90s, we formed a very rough approximation of a co-op with the employees we had. We had, at the time we did it, as I recall, I think we had 11 employees, and we decided to basically that the company itself was not going to value out at very much. So we just said everybody that's working here can come in as as a co-op owner of this company at no cost. And we did that, and some of the employees declined because they realized, oh, does this mean when paychecks get handed out, the owners are the ones that don't get one? And then we said, yeah, that's right. You noticed.
Skin in the game.
But that's skin in the game.
Mm-hmm.
It's got to come from somewhere. And they said, well, I'd just as soon keep getting my paycheck.
Mm-hmm.
So we didn't get a unanimous approval of that. And over time, by the year 2002 or 3, we were down to just myself as the sole owner at that point. But at one point we had, I think, 11 briefly co-owners. But we didn't do it. We didn't do it in any proper official way. So I don't even know.
Right, it was informal back then.
Stand up legally. I don't know.
Yeah. Whereas the last 4 years have been very bring in the consultant, make sure the T's are crossed, the I's are dotted, very with great precision.
Oh yeah, the ESOP has to be done right.
Yeah,
absolutely.
Yeah, and I think people do feel empowered. They feel like they have a part of control and seeing the destiny through. And so I wanted to transition and just kind of zoom way out for a second and say, are there any moments, memories, projects over the past 48 years that stand out as being exceptional to the point of wanting to, anything you wanted to share in the next 13 minutes? Because Barb's going to come knocking on the door in 13 minutes.
She is. I don't know. I would say that the project I'm most proud of, I don't talk about it much, but it's the Galloway House. I mean, that was Terry's and my creation, but it was me implementing a lot of radical ideas of the time that people weren't doing. But made sense to me, and again, I figured we can do it. We can make it happen. That was quite a remarkable house. I think it's interesting that you went and toured it. I would love to tour it again. I haven't been there in forever.
I remember coming back and telling you, do you know what he said 15 years later? Like, do you know what he said? Like, because I can't help it. I asked him, he showed us the closet full of controls.
Yeah.
It was just stacked with an amazing amount of controls. He closed that door, and he had, a decent, I forget, it was 6 or 8 solar hot water collectors up on the roof with a nice solarium. Because it basically looked like a passive solar dream. It was like, we got a blank slate, we got some insurance money, let's do this. Had a pool,
right? And
solar hot water collectors, PV. I'm like, what would you do if you version 2? Like, this is this whole sales team. We want to know about design and what you would do. He's like, I would just tone down the solar hot water. Like this pool is a hot tub.
Yeah.
And so he had perfect exposure. Perfect. And so the pool was running, it was very warm.
Yeah.
And he's like, I just put up a little bit more PV.
Yeah.
But he was very happy 15 years later and tickled.
Yeah. Keep in mind, early 90s, PV was not a thing.
Right. Right.
So we didn't even install the PV on that house. He waited maybe 10 years, I forget how long, before he went back and put the PV in.
Right.
When we had rebates,
right,
and net metering and all, and it made sense.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Interesting.
Yeah. That kind of client. I guess for our last, again,
we were way off your list.
Way off the list. But we covered a lot of the...
We covered a lot of it,
yeah.
I think. Yeah.
And Brianne has so many good questions here. It's
pick the best.
I'll do the last one. What's the best piece of advice you've ever received, and how has it influenced your journey?
I would say hire the right people. And by that I mean hire for attitude as much as aptitude. Hire people who have the fire in the gut to do what it is that you do and that believe in your mission and your values. And you know, if they need to be taught something, they don't know everything, they can be taught. They can learn. They can take classes. But people can't learn how to be.
Right.
At least not easily. And certainly I don't want that to be my job here.
Right.
to teach people how to be. But that's there's Barb. I better answer.
She's on time.
Hello, you're early. All right. Good luck. All right, bye.
All right, we get an extended
We're
couple
early.
minutes
Yeah,
here.
Yep.
So we were talking earlier about, you know, different projects that kind of came up, ones that stand out, like the Terry Galloway House, Barbara Hollenbach, your parents' house as being one of the first solar hot water. Do you want to tell us a little bit about the day that Julia Butterfly Hill came into the office and said, "Hey, I'd like to do this thing"? I was describing this story a couple days ago to someone, and they're like, "Who's Julia Butterfly Hill?" I'm like, "Well, this is an activist," and we were talking about how different clients almost sought you out because they knew, "Hey, I might not know how to do this thing, but I know someone who knows how to get things done and tackle these puzzles."
Yeah.
She was an activist who, I forget the year, but she was sitting in a tree. She decided we want to save this old growth tree, Luna, right? Up in Mendocino or Humboldt. This beautiful tree. And she decided to go up and protest and sit in the platform, and she ended up there for a year.
Yep.
Right? A very long time to be acting in civil disobedience, stopped, saved the tree, and became famous for this protest. And as part of her activist tour afterwards, she came to Sunlight Power. And why don't you tell us about...
Yeah, I was just trying to remember how I actually met her and what was the mechanism by which that happened. It was actually before that I had been in touch with her, and it was someone up in Grass Valley, and I'm trying to remember who it was, had come across her and had his own story about Julia Butterfly Hill that I didn't even realize it was the same person until I connected it together, that this young lady had come out of nowhere and wandering into Grass Valley trying to find her way in the world, and basically asked him, where would I go to find like-minded people who want to help the environment? And he said, you should go to Humboldt. Humboldt's where you should go. And sure enough, she showed up in Humboldt, and sure enough, she ended up just talking to the activists there, and they were saying, we need somebody to sit this week because so-and-so is sick now or something. She said, well, I got nothing to do. I'll go sit. And she ended up in the tree, and she just stayed in the tree for over a year. But I got put in touch with her by the other person that had met her. And so I connected up with her. I went to her 30th birthday party right here in Berkeley. We were looking for new space for Sunlight and Power at the time, and I was actually familiar with the building she was in. It was Cliff Bar's old building in North Berkeley, in the flats. Anyway, so I connected with her there at her party, and then her bus project showed up, and that's when she showed up with the bus Do you remember the
I
bus
do.
showing up here?
I do. I remember the bus project. I remember it being as if, at the time it was among a lot of circles, she was famous.
Yeah.
It was nationwide famous, wrote a book.
Yep.
And she kind of was the poster child, if you will, for the environmental movement of like, no, this is important. This is time. Mm-hmm. And she came in and everyone was a little bit, what? Okay. And she wanted her tour bus to be solar and have radiant floors with biofuel.
Right.
And it was this fantastical project that I don't know how many people have knocked upon that door on Folger Avenue and said, I need a PV panel for my bus. And we're like, no way. Julia Butterfly came in, sprinkled a wand, and was like, okay, we'll do this thing. And we had had Blake up there, PV up on the roof.
I worked on that. I worked on that bus for a couple months. Not entirely, but I helped implement a lot of the systems that were built into that thing. No, that was great fun, and got to know some really good people, mostly up in Petaluma. Mm-hmm. Is where it ended up getting worked on. Yeah. Which, living in Occidental, wasn't that far away. Mm-hmm. But Julia is a remarkable human being. She is, when you speak the word enlightened mm-hmm. with respect to an individual, mm-hmm. she defines to me enlightened. She's just remarkably clear-headed and intelligent and enlightened. Mm-hmm. Anyway, so we as a company helped with the radiant system in mm-hmm. there. I helped with various parts myself. I'm not sure exactly how much Sunland Power energy went into the tour bus, mm-hmm. but that was a great experience. Yeah, what an exciting, different projects along the way. Are there any other projects that kind of stand out for like, I'm proud of that? I'll tell you, we did a passive, now I'm trying to remember, we did a PV system on a small farm, basically on a greenhouse up in the Santa Cruz Mountains, where the main thing, I don't even remember a lot of the details about the job, except to remember that Rod and I did the project. We loaded the flatbed, which we had the flatbed at the time. We had one flatbed truck. And we had to put everything on the truck, absolutely everything that we were going to need, because we were going up into the mountains and we got to build this project mm-hmm. and not take forever to do it, get it done in a few days. And we were, miles and miles from civilization, really. So if you need a bolt that you didn't bring, you're screwed. No Amazon coming to your job site. So that I was kind of proud that we put that together, mm-hmm. and we're able, with good planning and good packing, we got it done. I think we did actually send somebody to the hardware store down in Santa Cruz at some point. But they went down there, once in a while anyway. Is that the monastery? Mm-mm. No, this is individual. Mm-hmm. The monastery is a similar example that mm-hmm. Blake mm-hmm. worked on. Yeah, I think that's one of the things that we talked about a little bit earlier about the range of projects, right? And not making widgets. Like this is, which drives the bottom line crazy a lot of times, right? It's like we should just make widgets. But the diversity of the projects, ranging from, I guess you guys had a molten salt battery at one point? It was a hydrate. It was a water salt hydrate. Water salt. It wasn't molten. But yes, We did work on one of those. It had to be an aluminum tank because this, amazingly, the salt actually didn't attack aluminum, but did attack steel and copper and so on. I think copper, yeah. So, as you mention these things, I just think about the evolution of Sunlight and Power and where we are today. I mean, I would not send, you guys out to try to sell anything like the stuff we used to do routinely. Like, we didn't care how complicated, we didn't care how crazy. If we could envision how it could work, we would do it. And, it's hard, like you say, how do you pay attention to the bottom line and run a business and do all the things you really need to do as a business when you have the attitude of we'll take on anything?
Right.
And often without any credit check on who it is you're trying to work for. So
I think it speaks to the ecosystem that you really helped to create at Sunlight and Power, where you're right, it can't all be, the cowboys on the roof, cowgirls on the roof. It needs to have the Patch Garcias, the John O'Connors, the counterbalanced, if you will, to that energy. And that's how a family works, right? You can't have it be just all one-sided, or it needs to be this team effort. And so I do think of the different impacts that, almost, it feels scripted almost, where people came into the fold and provided, their chapter of energy and then moved on. And when you look at the legacy of Sunlight and Power, and you see how many people have gone forth through this almost training ground, or it's almost like the baby Bells, when Bell got broken up into Lucent and all the things that happened. We have folks at the EPA, we have folks starting their own companies, we have folks starting green garden consulting firms. Like, if you track down the legacy that is Sunlight and Power, I think that's a project unto itself. There's hundreds of people who have now gone forth and started, kept with that same kind of framework. It's really a nice legacy.
It's interesting you brought that up. I was going through, I forget why, I was looking for an individual's name, contact information, actually in preparation for this retirement party, and realized that, going through our HR records, I didn't have all the records to go far back enough to find this person. But it opened my eyes because I got into the section of ex-employees. It's like, wow, we have a lot of ex-employees. And my initial reaction was, oh, that's, these are all failures. These are all, this is bad. This is too many, And then I looked at some of the names. I said, well, they're still in solar and they're doing good work. And and I realized, Szilard, started his own company. People are out there succeeding. Aurora, all sorts of different people who got their start here. This was the start. This is a taking off point for them that prepared them to know what they're doing and do a good job and be employable in the market. They were not really employable in the same way that they are today when they came to us. We helped, educate and train, hundreds if not thousands of people.
I come back to the theme of like an ecosystem, right? And I'm reading this book called The Service Berry right now. It's the same author who did Braiding Sweetgrass. Beautiful book about ecology and I guess symbiosis, right? The sharing of energy, where in nature, the sun is this prime mover, but then it's all interchange of energy, right? With plants, with human, it's an interchange. And I think I find that with Sunlight and Power, those employees that you're referring to came, held the baton,
Yep.
gave energy, received energy, and then went on to develop their own thing, or work at at SunPower, or work in their own company. But it's that interchange, right? Very positive. A lot of employees have left and come back.
Yep.
And having that open door, I think, speaks to a culture, speaks to the fact that, hey, you just gained more skills somewhere else, we can use you again. Coming back and then leaving again. And it's this kind of, it's an ethos that I don't think you find in corporate, in different companies.
Yeah.
And I think it makes Sunlight Power very special in the fact that, A, yes, not making widgets, B, welcoming people back, the right people, not all people, right? But some people that we're not a good fit.
Yeah.
It happens. Thousands of people have worked here. I mean, I don't know how long that list was, but 48 years, at least hundreds. And many of whom have come back for multiple stints and provided pretty critical pieces of their lives. I just think of Patch, who hired me in 2003, wore a lot of different hats, but was always this beautiful counterbalance to maybe the engineering mindset. She was the social, like, let's keep things together in the front room and the sale, and how very unique that is.
Mm-hmm.
That doesn't happen to a lot of companies, I don't think. And
I wouldn't know. This is the only company I've ever been in, really, other than PG&E.
which is I'm glad we started with that story, because I don't think many people will have realized that you started out at PG&E back in the day.
Yeah.
Learning what you didn't want to do.
Yep. No.
Well, I just want to, I've said this multiple times, but I don't think I can say it enough. I wanted to thank you for having a passion, and not only having that passion about solar and about renewable energy, but then having the courage and the mustard, whatever you want to call it, to follow that passion. And you formed a nucleus early on that I think people saw that. And instead of attracting engineers who could be designing nuclear bombs and doing a lot of damage in the world, they saw not only your passion, but your spirit, and you're wanting to make the world a better place. And they wanted to be around that. They wanted to be in that ecosystem, whether it was making biofuel or designing systems or schlepping hot water collectors up roofs. It was a feeling. It was just and that nucleus has now grown into this beautiful family of do-gooders and renewable energy experts that have really helped to lead and show by example how to do things the right way.
Yep.
And I just want to thank you. It's been an amazing ride. And it's not over.
Yeah.
But it's a different chapter.
Yeah.
So.
No, I'm looking forward.
Thank you, Gary.
Thank you, Jesse. Yeah, thanks for interviewing me and asking a lot of great questions and triggering some great memories.
Good.
It's been fun.
I'm glad I could.
Yeah.